She was dismissed the moment she walked into the inheritance gathering. A beige cotton dress, worn sweater, and simple flats, just enough to draw scornful glances across a room filled with polished beneficiaries, their smiles too sharp to be genuine. A man with a silver necktie spoke first, half mocking. "Is that the housekeeper?" A young woman whispered to her friend, probably some forgotten mistress hoping for a payout. Rose Bennett stood at the back of the room. She didn't answer, didn't flinch, just adjusted her fabric bag's strap. To them, she was merely a shadow, an intruder in a space meant for bloodline, inheritance, and privilege. But they were wrong. The woman they just humiliated was the lawful wife of the man they all hoped to inherit from. And today's will reading was a test she helped design. The Blackwood estate sprawled across a forested hillside, its limestone walls and iron gates a fortress against the world. Inside the grand hall lingered the scent of wealth, polished walnut, leather, and lilies from vases worth more than most people's rent. Crystal chandeliers scattered May sunlight across 42 relatives, partners, consultants, and aides, each dressed to claim their portion of Mason Blackwood's empire. Designer suits, satin dresses, diamonds winking with every gesture. They circulated, sipping champagne, condolences as rehearsed as their smiles. Rose entered quietly, selecting the back corner near a tall window. Her dress was modest, the beige fabric softened by time. Her sweater, a faded teal that had seen better days, hung slightly off one shoulder. Her auburn hair in a low bun, several strands loose around a face that needed no enhancement. High cheekbones, amber eyes that missed nothing, and lips that stayed closed when others would have snapped back. At 34, Rose possessed beauty that didn't announce itself but lingered, like a melody impossible to forget. Ethan Blackwood, Mason's second cousin, leaned against a mahogany desk, his Rolex catching light as he smirked. "Seriously, who let the cleaning staff in?" His voice carried deliberately, drawing snickers from nearby relatives. Victoria, his sister in a sapphire dress, tossed her hair. "Perhaps she's here to polish the will before it's read." More laughter, sharp as breaking glass. Across the room, Sophia, a niece with a tech startup and Instagram following, nudged her friend Olivia. "Bet she's one of his charity projects," Sophia whispered loudly enough for Rose to hear. "Or a mistress he forgot about. Look at her bag, like she's carrying her lunch." Olivia snickered, discreetly taking a photo. "This is going on my feed." Had Blackwood estate and had fail. Sophia typed a caption. "Found Mason's charity case crashing the will reading. Guess she thinks discount store chic gets her $1 billion," she announced, ensuring Rose heard every word. The crowd chuckled, some grabbing phones to share the post already gaining traction. Comments flooded in, strangers calling Rose desperate, their words a digital assault echoing the room's contempt. Rose stood motionless, her amber eyes catching Sophia's screen's glow, but she didn't speak. Her silence seemed to fuel their delight, as if her composure challenged them. "Poor thing doesn't even realize she's trending now," Olivia mocked. The laughter swelled, a chorus of cruelty making Rose's dignity their target. Rose's fingers briefly tightened on her cloth bag, plainly stitched without designer labels. She didn't acknowledge anyone's taunts or barbs. She stood still, breathing evenly, eyes fixed on the empty chair where the attorney would sit. To them, her silence was weakness. They couldn't see the steel beneath it, how her stillness commanded attention without trying. Grayson cleared his throat. "We're here for the will reading of Mason Alexander Blackwood, executed 3 years ago and verified authentic." Murmurs rippled through the room. 3 years? Mason vanished only 6 months ago, his private jet lost over the Atlantic. No wreckage, no body, just uncertainty that fueled headlines and greed. Most assumed he died, most hoped. Ethan straightened his tie, smirking. "Let's get to it. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Sophia leaned forward, nails tapping her phone, planning her victory post. Richard muttered about stock options while Eleanor whispered to Blake about the Aspen mansion. Rose watched silently as Grayson broke the seal, the wax cracking loudly in the hushed room. The crowd leaned in, breathing shallow, eyes hungry. This was the moment they'd dressed for, schemed for, flown across continents for. Mason's empire, worth $90 billion, was up for grabs. Or so they thought. Grayson read deliberately. "I, Mason Alexander Blackwood, being of sound mind, declare this my final will. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth." The room froze. Ethan's smile faltered. Sophia's phone slipped in her hand. Nothing? Impossible, Grayson continued. All my assets, shares, properties, and intellectual rights are bequeathed to one person. The one who stood by me for love alone, my wife Rose. A gasp tore through the room. Heads whipped around, searching. Ethan barked a disbelieving laugh. Wife? Mason wasn't married. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Sophia's eyes narrowed as Richard stood, his chair scraping loudly. This is fraud. Mason never mentioned a wife. Eleanor clutched Blake's arm. Where is this gold digger stealing what's ours? Grayson raised his hand. The will is legal, with supporting documentation. He revealed a photograph. Mason with his arm around Rose outside a courthouse, dated 7 years ago. The room erupted in protest as Rose stepped forward. Her movement was deliberate, like a tide turning. Every eye followed her as she crossed the room, stopping beside Grayson, posture straight and dignified. The silence became deafening. Ethan's mouth opened then closed, his tie suddenly garish. Sophia's face flushed, her earlier photo burning in her phone. Mrs. Blackwood, Grayson said with subtle respect, handing her the folder. I didn't come for money, Rose said clearly. I came to see who valued Mason as a person, not a fortune. Who would mourn him, not his wealth? Her amber eyes swept the room. You showed exactly who you are. Ethan found his voice. You're claiming to be his wife? You look like you shop at discount stores. I do, Rose answered simply. Mason didn't care. He loved me for who I am, not what I wore. Can any of you say the same? If you're his wife, where's the real proof? Sophia demanded. A photo isn't enough. Who'd demonstrate kindness? Who'd care about me, not my bank account? He paused, his eyes sweeping the crowd, fixing each one. Not one of you succeeded. Mason's eyes locked onto Ethan, the man who'd ridiculed Rose first. His silver tie now a gleaming noose around his neck. You called my wife a housekeeper, Mason said, his voice low but lethal, each word slicing through the room's stunned silence. You laughed while she stood there alone, allowing you to reveal your true nature. Did you imagine I wouldn't witness? Ethan shrank, his confidence gone, his hands fumbling with his tie as if it might rescue him. The crowd watched, paralyzed as Mason stepped closer, his presence towering despite his simple attire. You're not family, Ethan. You're a parasite, and I'm finished supporting you. A security officer appeared at Ethan's side, his grip firm, and as Ethan was escorted out, his protest drowned in the echo of Mason's words. The room felt lighter, justice a tangible force. Rose's honor restored with every step of Ethan's disgrace. Ethan tried to speak. Mason, please, we didn't know. She didn't say anything. Mason's gaze snapped to him, cold and final. She shouldn't have needed to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your initial instinct was to tear her down. That's not family. That's not loyalty. Sophia stepped forward, desperate now. We're sorry, okay? We didn't mean it. Tell her, Mason. Tell her to forgive us. Her eyes darted to Rose, pleading. But Rose's face was stone, her silence louder than any accusation. Mason shook his head. It's not about forgiveness. It's about consequences. He nodded to Grayson, who extracted another document. This is an addendum to the will, effective immediately. Anyone who insulted Rose today, identified in security footage, audio recordings, or witness accounts, is excluded. No shares, no properties, no contact. You're finished. Grayson began reading names, his voice a gavel. Ethan Blackwood, Victoria Blackwood, Sophia Evans, Richard Hayes, Eleanor Ward, Blake Lang. Each name landed like a lash, faces crumpling, protests rising, then dying as security personnel moved in. Ethan shouted, "You can't do this! I'm blood!" But a guard took his arm, firm but composed, guiding him toward the doors. Victoria followed, her sapphire dress trailing, her sobs echoing. Sophia clutched her cracked phone, whispering, "This can't be happening." As she was escorted out, Sophia's face drained of color as Mason turned to her, his gaze cutting through her like glass. "You turned my wife into a meme," he said, his voice steady but searing, "thinking your followers would applaud you. But deceptions don't endure, Sophia." He nodded to Grayson, who tapped his laptop, and Sophia's phone vibrated violently in her hand. Her social media accounts, her empire of influence, were collapsing live. Posts deleted, followers dropping by thousands, sponsors severing ties with brutal efficiency. "You're banned from my companies, my properties, my existence," Mason said as a guard took her arm, her cracked phone slipping to the floor. The crowd's gasps were a chorus of awe, the room electric with the thrill of justice. Rose stood beside Mason, her silence a crown as Sophia's digital throne crumbled. Her cruelty to Rose now her undoing. Richard's wife attempted to argue, her sapphires flashing, but Mason cut her off. "You called my wife classless. You don't get to remain." They departed, heads bowed, the crowd thinning as guards cleared the room. Eleanor's scattered pearls crunched underfoot, a fitting conclusion to her pride. When the doors closed, only a handful remained. 3 individuals who'd stayed silent, who hadn't laughed or sneered. Rachel Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes wet with relief. Daniel Reed, the librarian, who'd nodded to Rose when she entered, recognizing her quietly. And Anna, a groundskeeper who'd offered Rose water before the reading. No questions asked. Mason turned to them, his voice gentler now. "You saw her, you didn't judge. That's what family means." He looked at Rose, his hand finding hers again. "You were right about everything." Rose's gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. "I didn't want to be right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I wanted them to be better." She faced the 3 who remained, her eyes warm now. "Thank you for seeing me." Mason squeezed her hand, his voice low for her alone. "You're more than they'll ever comprehend." She smiled, small but genuine, and leaned into him, her sweater brushing his sleeve. The room was peaceful now, the vultures gone, the truth exposed. Rose didn't need the wealth, the estate, the empire. She'd never desired it. She'd wanted Mason, alive, whole, hers. And now, with the world stripped to its essence, they stood together, unshaken. The hills outside glowed verdant under the May sky, and the cameras deactivated. Their purpose fulfilled.